Alrighty, welcome everybody to the first official mock draft here on the MillerFootball YouTube channel. If you don't know me already, my name is David, go by MillerFootball, and as you can see down below me, I'm not alone today. We've got a very special guest, the man, the myth, the legend, Mr. jpownfl himself, Jackson Powers, is going to be joining us for this mock draft. So before we get into it, Jackson, how are you doing today, man?
I am doing great. Been a pretty good week so far. Had a good weekend. I went to a concert on Friday.
What
Um,
concert?
Yeet.
Mm-mm.
Love my
Okay, that
guy Yeet.
artist, I still don't know who he is, but that's fine.
Oh, I guarantee you've heard. He's like the face of like TikTok edits.
I
So
probably have. I just don't
I
know him by
guarantee I
name.
could pull up like 5 or 6 songs and you'd recognize him pretty quickly. But
Probably.
yeah, it's like a very like Playboy Cardi-esque brand
Mm,
of music.
gotcha.
Um, yeah, and yeah, trying to get the last couple mocks in before the draft. So I'm doing good. How are
That's
you
valid.
doing, Miller?
I mean, I'm doing all right.
Yeah,
Obviously, we're
good to
getting the
hear.
YouTube channel up and running, so I can't complain too much. We've got a functional laptop. We're off the Chromebooks, so
There we
we're
go.
moving
There
up in
we
the
go.
world. Yeah.
Yeah.
Uh, but before we dive into this, just going to point out I'm going to be making all the odd picks. Jackson's going to be making the even picks. We are going to be doing trades, and we're only going to be doing the first round today. If you guys want to see a 2-round mock draft, let me know down in the comments. I don't know if we'll be able to book Jackson again just because he's such a busy man. Everybody wants Jackson on their YouTube channels and podcasts, but I'll definitely make sure to crank one of those out. But without further ado, let's just go ahead and jump into it. I'm going to be on the board first here with the Carolina Panthers. And even though there seems to be some sort of smokescreen they're putting up about wanting to maybe trade back, I actually haven't heard anything about that recently. I don't know if maybe that's died off, but I think we're just going to stick and pick here with the first overall pick. And this is tough. This is really tough because not only does Carolina desperately need a quarterback, they have the best environment for a young quarterback to develop. So they're not, in a position where they have to take CJ Stroud because he has the highest floor out of the quarterbacks in this class. They could very easily take, Anthony Richardson or Bryce Young and let them develop, even though I don't think Bryce Young needs a ton of development. It's more or less just trying to make sure he's upright, which Lord knows Carolina will keep him upright, considering they have a pretty solid offensive line. But I think since the rumors are sort of swaying that way, I'm just going to go ahead and go with C.J. Stroud here. Uh, he's not my favorite quarterback in this class, but I do think he has the highest floor, and I do think he'll make a damn good starter at the NFL level.
Yeah, I like the pick, and I think it's probably most likely.
Mm-hmm.
And I was worried you were going to go with the obscure Miller Football Substack pick, uh,
Are we calling
which
that obscure? Is that an
I
obscure pick?
maybe not obscure, but for sure not the common choice. I
Oh,
think we can
fair,
agree, and I'm not
fair.
saying it's a bad one because
Right,
because
right, right. I
because
get
guess
you. I
what I'm
get you.
about to do right here at pick two.
No
The Houston
shot.
Texans passing up on Bryce Young, they are going to be selecting Anthony Richardson. And I know that most of you watching this right now are not necessarily on board with that, but this is a franchise that I think initially, like, one of the first things that they're going to look at is the size of a quarterback. And that is far and away Young's biggest concern. If you look at the track record of their quarterbacks in the last decade or two, all of them have a lot of size on them. And then you have that in Richardson pretty easily 6'4, 235 or whatever he's weighing in at, plus the freak athleticism. His draft stock is going to just keep continuing to rise, I think. And you look at this Texans team, like they have nowhere to go right now. They don't need anyone to be good in their rookie year. I think you take a flyer on Richardson and kind of hope he develops because I think he has a higher odds. Yeah, I think he has a higher chance of being like the premier guy in the league than Young. With Young, there's the size concerns. There's is he going to be able to stay healthy? Is he going to be able to throw over the middle effectively at the NFL level? I think there's less question marks with Richardson because I think that the question marks you feel really good about, like I need to fix his lower body mechanics. I need to make sure his decision making is a little bit better. You feel a lot better about that than I need Bryce Young to grow 3 inches and put on 20 pounds. I like the odds of Richardson's fixing his bad traits more than I like Young's. So I think that's kind of the surprise pick that I'm gaming with right now.
I like it. I mean, you know, as you said with my Substack mock, I did have Anthony Richardson go number 1 overall. I'm a big fan of his game. I think he absolutely has the highest ceiling out of any of the quarterbacks in this class. And I think you hit the nail on the head with Houston, pointing out the fact that they're not expecting a quarterback to play right away. You know, they can afford another year of Davis Mills running their offense because they just don't have the pieces in place to be ready to try to compete next year or try to do really anything next year. So I can't be mad at the pick. I will say I'm a little surprised and a little upset because I would like to see, like to have the opportunity to draft Richardson myself, but I like it. I respect it. It's ballsy and it's different. Now here with Arizona at 3, this is a team that needs just about everything, at least on the defensive side of the ball. They are pretty much devoid of any and all talent, especially with J.J. Watt retiring and Byron Murphy leaving leaving in free agency for the Minnesota Vikings. So there's a lot of directions they could go here. You know, you could stick and pick and take whoever you think the best defender on the board is. And I can tell you right now, it's not Mr. Will Anderson. Or, you know, you could trade back, try to acquire some picks. I'm leaning towards wanting to trade back here. I kind of have an idea of who I want to trade back with, but just for the sake of, another move that I think could possibly be made, I'm going to ask you, do you have any interest in trading up with any of your teams inside the top 15 for Mr. Bryce Young potentially?
I would not be surprised if the Titans made a move,
Mm-hmm.
but I think with the Titans right now, I think if they're going to, I wouldn't be shocked at all. I just don't know what the cost is going to be because, like,
Right.
you could obviously give up 11. I think that there's going to be players that they're going to be willing to cut ties with. Like, if you are able to trade up for like 11 and Jeffrey Simmons and maybe like a second rounder or something like that, that's a move I would like.
Mm-hmm.
I do not want them to be giving up their first next year. And I don't
Right.
know what the cost is going to look like on this pick. So it's a little bit hypothetical. Now that I would have said Seattle moving from 5 to 3 if I had taken Young right there, because I think that's a move that's really in the cards.
For sure.
Other than that, I am not too sure.
Okay, well, I'm going to tell you right now, since I have control of the Tennessee Titans, we're definitely going to jump up here and we're going to take
Okay.
Bryce Young because
All right.
as much as I hate to say it, I do not have a lot of faith in Malik Willis becoming the franchise guy for, oh my God, this is going to be a problem. There we go. I didn't realize I could just move that little bar.
Yep.
But anyways, we're definitely going to move up here. I don't have a lot of faith in Malik Willis becoming the franchise guy here for Tennessee. Now, unfortunately, we can't include players in the trade because I actually really liked your projected package of a first, a second, and Jeffrey Simmons. I think that makes a lot of sense for both teams. But unfortunately, like I said, we can't include that Jeffrey Simmons. So I think just for the sake of making the trade go through, I'm going to throw in the first rounder next year. But we're just going to pretend that that's Jeffrey Simmons because I would assume they have at least similar value. And they declined the trade. God damn it.
I
Hold on.
hate the simulator because you can't force a
Yeah.
trade through. You got to like redo it every time.
Mm-hmm.
I usually just like spam capital to make sure that they're going to accept it.
Yeah, I guess since
as
it's
long as like,
it's only a 1-round mock, so it doesn't really matter.
yeah.
But yeah, we're gonna say the package is a 1, a 2, and Jeffrey Simmons, but I'm just gonna throw in whatever to make sure it goes through here. And there we go.
There we go.
So, like I said, with the Titans here at 3, we're gonna be taking Bryce Young. They need a quarterback. You know, Ryan Tannehill is Ryan Tannehill. Interpret that how you want. And Malik Willis, you know, as much as a lot of people, including myself to a certain extent, really wanted to gaslight ourselves into thinking there was a quarterback out of last year's class that could really be something, he's just not. There are so many issues with his game, and throwing him out last year and getting to watch him play against an NFL defense was just brutal. In short, maybe you can develop him a little bit and maybe he can be a little bit better, but Bryce Young's going to come in right away and be better. He doesn't have to play right away. He can sit behind Ryan Tannehill. He's going to get to develop alongside, you know, whatever other young pieces the Titans are able to reel in. And now they have that young quarterback they can really build around and set themselves up. And additionally, you know, like Jackson said, they're going to have their first round pick next year, which is huge probably not going to be a great football team, so maybe they'll be in line to take a guy like Marvin Harrison Jr. or the offensive tackle from Penn State that I know everybody's really high on. I can't remember his name for the life of me, but they'll be in position next year to hopefully build around him a little bit more.
All right. Yeah, I like that pick. With number 4 here, I think this is a pretty obvious choice. I am going with Kentucky's Will Levis because it is these 4 quarterbacks and who. There is not another option that you can really justify, and you are not rolling into this next year with Matt Ryan and Sam Ehlinger again. There needs to be an actual serious replacement at the quarterback position. And I think while Levis is pretty clearly the consensus QB4, and maybe drafting him with the 4th overall pick is a little bit of bad value, it is the only serious quarterback replacement option that you actually have. In terms of Levis as a player, I think that he's deemed as this like total project. And from the limited scope of film that I saw with him, my thoughts were, I think that his floor is higher than people think, but I think that his ceiling is lower than people think. Like I think there's a smaller like range of outcomes that come with Will Levis. So you can at least be decently comfortable with that. That being said, there's still a lot of stuff that needs to be worked on. I think his footwork is really bad. I don't think he is a plus decision maker just yet. The accuracy obviously needs tweaking, but he's got a big arm. He's a really good runner. I do not know how I feel about him as like a locker room guy. I've heard like rumors that he is not doing well in interviews, but I don't really know the truth to that because I'm not in that room. But yeah, I think this is really the only like option that you're going to have to actually throw a real quarterback into that room. So maybe you're not super happy with it, but as long as you're getting a 1st-round caliber quarterback into the building, you should walk away satisfied if you're Indianapolis. So I move this pick to you. Do not screw up my Seahawks.
Oh yeah, that's right. Get to pick for Jackson Seahawks here. And this is where we're going to take Myles Murphy. No. See, in my Substack mock, I went with Jalen Carter here, and I feel like that's a really good pick for Seattle, just because, we've talked about it in DMs, and obviously your name on Twitter is sign a nose tackle because Seattle's defensive line is so bad, especially in the trenches. But the more I watch this year's defensive line class, specifically the interior defensive linemen, I start to become a bigger fan of potentially waiting to take a D tackle. And with Jalen Carter having these quote unquote issues that a lot of teams seem to be weary of, we've already heard the reports that like Las Vegas doesn't even have him on their draft board anymore, which is hilarious given the fact that it's the Raiders. So I don't think Jalen Carter is the only pick here, but it's the pick we're going to make. I mean, he is, in my eyes, the best player in this draft class. And Seattle has shown, over the years that they're willing to take risks on guys with character issues. And I know I've seen people talk about them like trying to get away with that, or get away from that rather, where they want more high character guys. But truthfully, I'm not putting a whole lot of stock into Jalen Carter's off the field stuff, because to me, without getting too much into like morals and ethics, it comes off more as a college kid being an idiot and making a dumb mistake than, doing something that's truly awful. Because it's not like he was driving. It's not like he was intoxicated. He was just goofing off with his buddies. And, unfortunately, his other friend, or I believe teammate, ended up losing his life. So that being said, I do think Jalen Carter's definitely a top 10 pick. I know a lot of people or not a lot of people, but I have seen people consider him falling out of the top 10. And I think that's ridiculous.
Yeah, that's the pick I like. I mean, you look at Seattle's depth chart right now, there is 2 healthy defensive tackles. So like there needs to be guys put into the building, and Carter, in my opinion, is the best player in the class. Yeah, that's the pick I would have gone with. At pick number 6, I would have gone Carter if he was on the board. Now I'm going to go to my other default, Christian Gonzalez out of Oregon.
Good pick.
This is a prospect that I think is legitimately in the conversation of when you hear like the generational prospects out of this class. It's like it's Carter, it's Anderson. I think Gonzalez belongs in that conversation. This dude's hips are absolute butter. I
Hmm.
trust him in just about any coverage. I think he's a solid run defender, good length, good build overall as a cornerback. And the hips are really the thing that stands out to me. I saw a clip where like he was guarding someone on an in route and they faked out and step in and he bit on the out route and didn't lose any separation because he flipped his hips so fast and is just he's a specimen. And I think that he is like one of my favorite cornerback prospects that I think I've ever watched. And you look at this Lions philosophy, Dan Campbell loves to play very aggressive coverage styles. He's a cover
Hmm.
one press guy because he wants the receivers to just be shut down and give the defensive line time to just get to the quarterback because they're being shut down by superstars. And he wanted to run it last year. He just didn't have the personnel in the secondary to make that happen. Oruwariye had a serious step back. Excuse me. He had a serious step back last year, and Okuda is just too boomer bust to be consistently making that happen.
Hmm.
Gonzalez is cog number one in that scheme. And I think going out and getting him at 6 is going to be a dream of Dan Campbell's.
For sure. I agree 100%. I admittedly haven't delved too deep into this year's corner class, but I have watched a little bit of Christian Gonzalez, and I don't talk about it publicly or anything just because it hasn't come up, but I hate watching cornerback film. It bores the living daylights out of me. But I can tell you right now, watching Christian Gonzalez has been some of the most fun I've had with this draft class. I mean, this guy in terms of corner prospects, is perfect, just about perfect. I would argue he's closer to a blue chip prospect than a certain edge rusher from Alabama that I'm now shitting on for the second time. Maybe I'm crazy for saying that. Maybe that's just me being way too low on Mr. Will Anderson, but I do think Christian Gonzalez is a lot closer to being that guy than he is. And I think that's something that, I would like to see more people come around to, but maybe I'm the only one that thinks that. Speaking of which, here at number 7 with the Raiders, we're not going to be taking Will Anderson. We're going to be taking my top edge rusher on the board, and that is Mr. Tyree Wilson out of Texas Tech. It pains me that I can't just sit here and let him fall to 9 because obviously this is my dream pick for the Bears, but I got to be real with myself. I can't sit here and try to be like, well, Will Anderson's better to most people, so I'm going to take him here. No, we're not going to do that. I'm going to take the guy I think is better. Tyree Wilson, he has all of the tools. He has everything you want in terms of length, strength, the ability to generate speed to power. He has all of the tools to be a good run defender. He's not quite there yet. He doesn't quite have the polish. But you send him to the Raiders, you put him in a room with Chandler Jones and Mad Max Crosby. He's going to learn things from them. He's going to learn things from Patrick Graham. And I think this is a great spot for him to develop. He can start out early on as a rotational edge. Obviously, they still have Chandler Jones on the roster, but he was very disappointing last year. And now, once he's off the roster, I don't know when his contract's up, but I'm sure they have some sort of out coming up. I can't imagine they signed Chandler Jones long term. They'll be able to slot Tyree Wilson in there, and then him and Mad Max Crosby will be one of the most terrifying edge duos in all of football for quite a while. Which, again, hate to say it because I want him in Chicago, but this is a home run pick for the Raiders, in my opinion.
Yeah, that certainly makes my life easier because I thought you were going to take Anderson, and I was plotting and scheming for a trade back that would have left the Bears stranded by one pick for your guy. And in most scenarios, I'm a believer that the Falcons should either trade up for something or trade back for something because I
Mm-hmm.
think in terms of how the board usually pans out, they're a little bit stranded. I don't think Tyree Wilson is a great fit with them.
Yeah.
And so if he was my option here, I would have traded back. But here, I'm just going to make it simple. I'm going to go with Will Anderson. Um, I think that he is in terms of like when you say you think Tyree Wilson is better, I'm still a believer that Anderson's my guy. But to your credit, I do think it is a legitimate conversation that
Mm-hmm.
needs to be had. I don't think Anderson belongs in this blue chip category of edge rushers,
No.
but I think he possesses everything to be like a top 5 pick. He is kind of lacking bend. He's not a
Mm-hmm.
great tackler, but to me,
Mm-hmm.
he has just about everything else. I think he has finesse on both the outside and the inside, depending on where he's lined up. He needs to put a little bit of weight on, but I think his play strength is really, really great. He's good at disengaging. He's someone that always stays in the play. He's just an edge rusher that anyone would be lucky to have as their edge number one. You look at Atlanta, like I don't even know who their sack leader last year was,
Right.
and they did spend an early second rounder on Arnold Ebiketie last year, and there's still
Mhm.
potential that he works out. But I think there needs to be someone else in that defensive line that can really game wreck a pass rush. And Anderson at this point on the board is the obvious choice to me. So that's who I'm going to go with.
Yeah, I mean, it's a good pick. Will Anderson, as much as I, talk down on him, is still a really, really good pass rusher, a really, really good prospect. It's just I cannot get behind, him being the top guy on the board just because of that tackling issue you mentioned. I put a lot of stock into players being able to do something when they get in the backfield. Like pressures are great, don't get me wrong, but the amount of sacks, the amount of TFLs that Anderson leaves on the board is just a lot for me. And you're not wrong with anything else. He has the finesse, he has the technique, his hands are great. It's just that one flaw I feel like a lot of people are not, looking into enough, not putting a lot of stock in. And I think it's a bigger red flag than people want to make it out to be. But now with Chicago here at 9, I'm in a tough spot because obviously Tyree Wilson is who I want to fall here. I definitely would have taken Will Anderson if he would have fell. But now we're going to be looking towards the offensive line. And I'm of the belief that the Bears' best bet if they're in this situation is to trade back. But the problem is I don't know who I would trade back with because none of the quarterbacks fell. Um, so it's not like we're going to have Tampa Bay jumping up from 19 to grab a quarterback or whoever, Washington, maybe if you want to get crazy. But I don't know. It's tough. Washington is a team I could still see trading up because we do have Devon Witherspoon sitting on the board at 9, but I'm going to be 100% honest. I haven't watched him. I don't know how the scheme fit works there. So I don't know if that's going to be a great pick for them. So as much as I'd like to trade back and take who I think is the best tackle in this class in Darnell Wright, we're just going to take him here at 9. And sure up Chicago's offensive line. You're going to have Wright and Braxton Jones as your two tackles. Cody Whitehair is going to kick into center, and then you'll have Tevin Jenkins and Nate Davis as your two guards. And in my opinion, that's a hell of an offensive line for Justin Fields. You went out and got him weapons. Now you can spend the rest of the draft maybe picking up a center that can replace Cody Whitehair and building up your defense, which I think is ideal for Chicago. As for Darnell Wright, he is one of the stronger tackle prospects in this class for sure. I think he's pretty technically refined as well. He does have some issues, he's not perfect, but as far as right tackle prospects go, you're going to be hard pressed to find many guys better than him. And I do think he projects as the type of guy that can start for a decade plus somewhere at right tackle and be pretty damn good at it.
Yeah, I'm fresh into my tape review of this offensive line class, and him I have not come around to yet.
Mm-hmm.
But here at 10, I'm going to be selecting one of the guys that I have watched. We're going to go two offensive tackles in a row. For the Eagles, I'm going Paris Johnson Jr. And the reason for that is he is like, if God were to have the ideal build for like an offensive tackle, it would be Paris Johnson Jr. He's 6'5", 330 or something like that. I don't remember how
Mm-hmm.
much he weighs. 36-inch arms, which is crazy. He is super big, super long, very athletic. The only thing athletically that he's really missing is strength, and I think he needs to put that on once he gets to the NFL.
Mm-hmm.
But he's an athletic specimen that's not very technically refined. His hands are really bad, really slow, and he doesn't get a great punch. I think he needs more play strength. He's constantly letting guys into his frame. He was
Mm-hmm.
only a one-year starter at Ohio State as a true junior, I believe. But when I look at Philadelphia, this is an offensive line coaching staff that I think there are very few coaching staffs where I'm just like, put an athletic body in the room. They're going to help give them like they're gonna guide them along the journey of being like a star at the NFL level. One of them, I'm glad to say, is my Seahawks cornerback room, and that's exactly what happened with Tariq Woolen.
Hmm.
And that's been a trend for a really long time. And one of the other ones is Philadelphia's offensive line room, because the veterans at this point are just getting way too old. Lane Johnson and Jason Kelsey are not staying around for a long time. Johnson has the size that if you really wanted to kick him to the inside, you probably could. But I think he projects a little bit better as a high end tackle. And I think he might not even be a starter instantly for Philadelphia, but it's someone that you want to have, like, you want to have the opportunity to kind of mold him, because if you put the right hands on him, he could be an absolute beast. And there's no better area where I think he could develop his game and turn into a star. So I think Philadelphia kind of investing for the future is the direction I want to see them go in, and that is the best option to do it right there.
For sure. Just to clarify for anyone watching this is probably pissed off I skipped out on Paris Johnson Jr. for Chicago, because I know a lot of Bears fans like him. The point you made about Philadelphia's offensive line room and their coaching staff and how good they are at developing players is part of the reason why I skipped out on Paris Johnson Jr., because I haven't seen that yet from Chicago's offensive line coaching staff. Obviously, Braxton Jones looked really good, or relatively really good, for a fifth round rookie in his rookie season. But Paris Johnson Jr., he's so raw, and like you mentioned, that strength profile being very, very low is a big concern for me, especially with the type of offense we run and how important it is to have big physical run blockers that can get outside and whatnot in our offense. And obviously, Paris Johnson Jr. can get outside and move, but the rawness and the fact that I don't necessarily know if he's a day one starter for a lot of teams is the big reason why I passed on him. Because with Chicago, you've basically backed yourself into a point right now where you have to get a tackle that's going to start day one. And I think Darnell Wright's a lot closer to that. And in terms of ceiling, Wright might not have the all pro potential that Johnson does, but he's still going to be a solid starter long term at the very least. But here with Arizona at 11, we're going to go ahead and shore up that cornerback room, replace Byron Murphy, who left in the offseason for Minnesota, like I mentioned earlier. And we're going to go ahead and take Devon Witherspoon out of Illinois. Like I said, Arizona's defense is just completely devoid of talent. And while you missed out on some of the top guys by trading down, in this scenario, you added a fantastic defensive tackle that's really going to give you a boost, especially with guys like Zach Allen and J.J. Watt no longer being on the roster. And you're getting Devon Witherspoon to put in your secondary to pair with Budda Baker. And I don't think I can name a single corner on the Cardinals roster right now. So you got to take a corner here. And in my opinion, he's the best one on the board.
Yeah, I am not the biggest Devon Witherspoon fan, but I think I've only watched one game of him, and it was apparently his worst game. So I might need to get a little bit better film access on him. But with pick 12 right here, Houston already grabbed their future franchise quarterback in Anthony Richardson. But as it stands, they have no receivers for him to throw to after trading Brandon Cooks. They are going to pick by far the best receiver in the draft class right here, Jackson, Smith, and Jigba. He's a very nuanced player, and we talked about it earlier. Like, I think Richardson needs to take some strides as like a pocket passer. I remember, like, before the DJ Moore trade, I remember talking to you about this because you have a quarterback who needs to take some strides as a pocket passer. If any receiver in this class is going to help a guy do that, it is JSN. He
For
is
sure.
so nuanced, and he is just a quarterback's dream because he finds the best way to give them a path to throw the ball. He's open in any coverage. He just worms his body the right way because he's really smart. He has a lot of Cooper Kupp in him, where he's not the greatest athlete, and I think particularly where JSN lacks is his long speed. But he has good agility, and he's really, really smart and really reliable. And you might see not as much production as you'd like out of him if Richardson is a day one guy and is as raw as he is right now. That's a little bit scary, but I think together this duo is going to be seeing all pros on all pros. Both of these, I did a video on my draft crushes, and both of these guys fit into that category. Both of these guys were featured in that video. I think teaming them up would be chaos for the league
For
because
sure.
JSN is going to be the guy that helps Anthony Richardson take some serious strides. And if you can progress him along as a pocket passer, it's over. Houston's winning the next 40 Super Bowls or whatever it is because this duo is going to wreak havoc in the league. So I think teaming those two up is going to be awesome.
I don't know about the next 40 Super Bowls, but I do like the pairing a lot. And if you're interested in watching Jackson's video about his draft crushes, I'll make sure to link that down in the description. It's definitely worth the watch. I've watched it a few times actually, and there's a lot to learn from that. But we're here with the Jets at 13, and I'm going to tell you right now, we are not trading pick 13 for Aaron Rodgers in this scenario. I do think there's a world where the Jets can hold on to their first round pick this year and still end up with Aaron Rodgers on the roster. Something along the lines of like a second this year, a conditional second next year, and I don't know, a fourth and Corey Davis or something, right? Trade that for Aaron Rodgers. So we're going to go under that assumption since it's a one-round mock draft. We can't actually do the trade, but we're just going to say in this scenario, the Jets wind up with Aaron Rodgers and they're sitting here at 13. They need to do something to help him out. Because of that, we're going to be looking towards the offensive line. And this is a bit of a struggle for me with this pick because I'm kind of like, I don't know. It's tough. Outside of Darnell Wright and Paris Johnson Jr., there's not a lot of difference between the rest of the top tackles in this class for me. Like Peter Skoronski is an offensive lineman, by far and away the best, but I do think the gap between Skoronski the guard and Skoronski the tackle is going to be fairly wide. And in this scenario, I would imagine whoever gets drafted here is going to slot in at right tackle. So I don't know. With that, I think the route we're going to go. You know what? I'm just going to play it smart. We're just going to take the best offensive lineman. We're going to take Skoronski because, as a tackle, I don't think he's going to be bad in the NFL if you play him a tackle by any means. But I do think, you're looking at a blue chip guard versus a solid tackle. So worst case, he comes in right away. He's playing right tackle and he's giving you solid football. And then, at some point you get a right tackle later on, you kick him inside and boom, your offensive line has a guard duo of Peter Skoronski and Elijah Vera Tucker, and you're in a fantastic position. So while maybe it's not the best pick for what they need right now, he will help them in the short term and long term. Obviously, he's going to be a fantastic lineman for them.
That is who I was about to go with at 14, and at this point, there are a lot of routes that I could go with here, but
sure.
one that I'm going to go with is pretty unconventional, and I don't know that he should be picked at this point. I'm going to go with Zay Flowers for the Patriots.
Ooh.
They just lost Jacoby Myers. They're very much in need of a receiver. The reports have been that they really like him, and I kind of take pre-draft reports with a grain of salt, but this one I'm buying into because I think it makes a lot of sense for them. I think that their offense really lacked a creativity. It's a lot of quick game, a lot of screens. And you look at the tension with Mac Jones and the Patriots right now. I think that's a lot of the reason why, because Mac Jones did not want to run that. Mac Jones wanted to be an actual pocket passer and be unlocked against the defense. And when you're running wide receiver screen 800 times a game, that there's no real opportunity for him. I think Zay Flowers is an electric weapon to put onto this offense. I have concerns about him playing on the outside, but he's small and he's a little ball of muscle and is going to step into the league and immediately be one of the best players after the catch because he is so shifty. He's hard to bring down. Once you have the ball in his hands, there's so much that you can do. And I think that the Patriots were running an offense like that without a real player to fit in that sort of scheme. You had a lot of deep threats. You had a lot of kind of like zone nuance guys. I don't really know how to phrase it, like JSN, I guess.
Right.
But they need someone with real speed, with real quickness, with the ball in their hands. Zay Flowers is going to be that option. I probably would have gone Skoronski if that was available, but I think this is a solid like plan B pick.
Right. Yeah, and on the bright side for Zay Flowers, obviously playing at Boston College, it shows up on film. He's used to playing with awful quarterback play. And if the rumors are true that Belichick is trying to move on from Mac Jones and they end up starting Bailey Zappi next year, I don't think that would be their end game. But, hypothetically, if that were to happen, at least Zay Flowers knows how to compensate and knows how to cook despite having subpar quarterback play. So here at 15, I've got the big bad Green Bay Packers. And, you know, I really, really, really wish I had less integrity and I had less unwillingness to be biased so I could just slot Miles Murphy here at 15. Even though it does, kind of make sense. They like their big athletic defensive line or defensive ends, edge rushers. But instead, we're going to go tight end because Green Bay's tight end room is abysmal. As of right now, God love him, Josiah DeGuara is currently their tight end one, and he's more of a H-back, borderline fullback type. A guy they took in, I believe, the second or third round. Which props to Brian Gutekunst for that, addressing the fullback position in day 2 of the draft. Love to see that. But we're going to get them a big body blocking tight end. And this might be a little bit of a reach, but we're going to go Darnell Washington. He's a guy that has a lot of potential as a pass catcher. And, like I said, as a blocker, they're probably going to be leaning heavy on their run game next year, especially if Aaron Rodgers isn't in town. I can't imagine they expect Jordan Love to throw the ball 30, 40 times a game. And if they do, they're out of their mind. So you're going to want him in there to be able to block for Aaron Jones and A.J. Dillon. And, whenever they are able to open up the playbook, let Jordan Love air it out a little bit more. I think he's somebody that can really develop, with his passing skill set. You can look at this and say maybe he's going to be available in the second round. I don't know if that's the case, with his physical tools and the immediate impact he'll be able to have and the way the league is kind of starting to value tight ends more. I wouldn't say he's somebody that's necessarily guaranteed to fall to Green Bay in the second round. So we're just going to take him here, and that gives you back-to-back picks that, while not the most popular, I think do fit their respective teams very well.
I'm going to be completely honest. I was so certain that you were going to go with Mayer on that pick. I saw you click on the tight end folder, and I was like, oh, all right, he's going Mayer. I like it. I actually think that this pick is very realistic because Packers never seem to pick the conventional option.
Exactly.
And Washington is never that. And another draft habit they have is like draft the athlete and make it work. And in terms of just pure athleticism, like Washington is probably the best tight end. So I think that's a very realistic pick of you to do that.
That's a very nice way of saying you don't agree with it, and I respect
that. I don't agree with it in the sense that it's not what I would do. But I think in terms of like realism from the mock, I think you hit the nail on the head.
Yeah. I'm just giving you a hard time. I get you.
Okay, pick 16. Usually with how the board falls when I do a mock draft, I go interior offensive line basically every time. But there's a guy on the board that needs to be addressed. Penn State's Joey Porter is not falling past pick number 16. If I have anything to say about it, this dude is 6'2" with the arms of someone who is, I think, 6'6". Super long arms. He's going to be an absolute demon in press. I think he totally has all of the tools to be an alpha cornerback one. And Washington's cornerback room has Benjamin St. Just. I don't know how to say it. He's a guy I think is pretty underrated, but I think there's someone that still needs to go alongside him. I love Porter because at a minimum, you're getting a very solid zone mover. When I scout guys, I like to do something called the 0 stride test, which means if they take 0 strides in this one area, what are you getting out of them? And with Porter, it's someone who can play man from time to time, but you can heavily rely on him in zone. He's very smart. He plays the receivers very well. But I am betting on the upside with that man coverage. I think he's really smart. He doesn't overreact to quick moves at the line of scrimmage when he's pressing someone. He has the arm length to take a receiver out of the play by the time the ball is snapped because you just cannot break that press. I love Joey Porter. I think his hips are a little bit scary. I don't think he's someone who can really flip and turn downfield very fast. But I'm willing to look past it with all the other strengths I see with him. And I think him in a Washington uniform would make this a defense that is heavily feared once again, like we saw in the 2018 years or whatever it was, where Washington was just stacked and like one of the best defenses in the league. I think drafting Porter would make them one step closer to returning to that form.
Yeah, for sure. So now Pittsburgh, once their front office is able to turn off Marvin's room after watching Joey Porter Jr. go off the board, one pick ahead of them, we're going to go ahead and make the boring pick and address the trenches. And we're going to take Anton Harrison. Pittsburgh's offensive tackles are bottom of the barrel in terms of NFL starters. And you've got Kenny Pickett now, who's your apparent franchise guy. You spent a first-round pick on him. You were the only team foolish enough to spend a first-round pick on a quarterback last year. So, you got to keep him upright in some way or another. With the dream pick of Joey Porter Jr. being off the board, I think this makes the most sense. In my opinion, Anton Harrison is the third best tackle in this class. I don't think he quite has the upside of a guy like Wright or Paris Johnson Jr., but I do think, he's kind of like CJ Stroud in the sense that his floor is a lot higher than those guys. Well, a lot higher than Paris Johnson Jr. I wouldn't say a lot higher than Wright. He has a lot of experience playing left tackle. And yeah, he's going to sub in, be your left tackle day one, and help keep Kenny Pickett upright. I'm not as good at explaining offensive line picks as you are, apparently, because I suck with explaining offensive line traits. I'm just like, yeah, that guy doesn't move a lot when the defender's coming at him, so he's probably pretty good.
I mean, it is a good pick here. He's probably the most nuanced guy in the class.
Mm-hmm.
His hands are really good. He doesn't have incredible size or athleticism, I would say. But I think NFL teams really like him. At least that seemed to be the vibe at the combine.
For sure.
And the Steelers, I think, are someone who are, I would say they're contending now, but their window is definitely sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you need to add someone on that offensive line who you can expect to contribute as a rookie. Anton Harrison's probably going to be the guy to do that. So I like that pick.
For sure.
Yeah, if he's available on the board at that point, that is probably the exact move I would have made. At pick 18, this is my Trayvon Walker riser pick right here. They grabbed Christian Gonzalez at pick 6.
Mm-hmm.
I think one of their biggest issues last year was their run defense, particularly on the inside. I think the Levi Onwuzurike gambit has not worked, and they need to move someone on the inside. But I think that they're gonna want someone who is kind of able to be kicked in and kicked out. I don't fully know how to say his name, but he's the edge rusher from Northwestern. I believe his last name is at the bottom. Adebawore? Okay, yeah. Adebawore is who they're going to go with here. This is the riser on my board that I think
for sure
is going to get taken a lot earlier than a lot of people think, at least right now. I don't know what his stock is going to be like come draft day, but his combine was exceptional. He has the flexibility to pass rush from both the outside and go in as far as probably a 4 technique. And I think that kind of versatility Dan Campbell is going to fall in love with. The defensive line needs a little bit more help. You have Aiden Hutchinson, you have James Houston on the outside, but you need someone who can kind of play a little bit more of that interior spot. I think he's going to be someone that they kind of kick to the inside because he's big enough to do that. And I think he's going to be used both as a pass rusher and someone who takes on 2 offensive linemen to help kind of stop the run. This is kind of my like out of the blue risk pick here, but it's a move that I could definitely see the Lions making because they love the flashy prospects. This is that. This is exactly what that is. So this is a move I could see happening.
Yeah, my heart breaks for that pick because Chicago seems to be pretty into Adebawore. At Northwestern's Pro Day, they were apparently really heavily engaged in conversations with him and actually went as far as to ask him if he could be their 3 technique, which, if you know anything about Matt Eberflus's defense, is incredibly important. Probably the most important position on the field at any given time. So if I would have been able to trade back with Chicago, that's definitely a guy I would have been looking at. I would have probably ended up with him or Darnell Wright. So seeing him go to Detroit sucks, but it's a great pick. I'm right there with you. I love Adebawore. The athleticism is absolutely undeniable. From everything I've seen, he's a pretty high character kid too, which obviously Dan Campbell will love. He's a hard fighter, high motor type guy as well, so he'll fit in pretty perfectly in Detroit. Now, as for Tampa, I tweeted out the other day, I think they're the hardest team to mock for because they need everything, just about. And by the time they pick, the pick-ins at some of the more premier positions that they're really hurting for aren't really there. The top couple offensive tackles are off the board. All the quarterbacks are off the board. But I am going to go offensive tackle here, just because you got to keep somebody upright. I think they signed Baker, so I guess as of right now, Baker Mayfield's their quarterback, which sure, I guess. So we're going to go with Broderick Jones here out of Georgia. He's already got experience blocking for one, spunky white boy quarterback who may or may not had a little bit of a run-in with the law. But you're getting a guy with incredible athleticism for his position, that finisher mentality, and a lot of upside. Now, he doesn't have the most experience. I think he started about 19 games in college, and he can be a little over-aggressive at times, but Tampa's got to get somebody up front, with Ryan Jensen retiring, and is it Donovan Smith that just got cut? Donovan something.
Yeah, that's right.
Okay, yeah,
I
Donovan
think it is
Smith.
Donovan Smith.
The human penalty flag that he was is now off the team. So you got to get somebody there to play left tackle. And between him and DeJuan Jones being the two tackles on the board, as much as I like DeJuan Jones, he's a lot more raw than Broderick Jones is. So we're going to go with Broderick here.
Okay, sorry, I keep fidgeting with my light because I look so like brooding from the angle that it's at. So I think I figured it out as good as it's gonna get. But with pick 20 here, I finally get an opportunity to pick with my Seahawks, and we're going with another offensive lineman, but this is someone who's kicked to the inside. I am going with Florida's O'Cyrus Torrence here.
Yep.
Seattle's offensive line last year had some highlights. You had rookie Charles Cross and Abe Lucas. Both of them looked very promising, but once you got to that interior, it was rough out there, man. I cannot watch Gabe Jackson commit another ineligible man downfield if I have anything to say about it. And he was cut, but Damian Lewis was no superstar, and Austin Blythe was awful at the center position. They need to just add interior offensive linemen into the room a little bit. And O'Cyrus Torrence is by far the number one guy on my board. I think he can run block well. I think he can pass block well. I don't really have any concerns with him other than he's not very fast. And if you are determined to use him as like a pulling guard, that might be an issue. That might be a little bit of a scheme fit. There's going to be other avenues to turn to, I think. But Seattle, I think, pulls their tackles more than they pull their guards, if I'm not mistaken. That might not be right. But from what I've noticed, that's what it feels like. So yeah, I'm going to go with Torrance to Seattle because this is probably their second biggest need behind interior defensive line. So you go into the first round, select probably the best two guys at each of those needs. I'm walking away happy, man. That's a great draft in my book.
Yeah, I mean, you're adding an unstoppable force and an immovable object in the first round of the draft with Torrance and Jalen Carter here. Good Lord, Seattle's trenches would be a hell of a lot better after those two picks. I love the Torrance pick. Like you said, they definitely need that interior offensive line help. And, that dude's basically like a Ford F-150 at guard. So definitely can't go wrong there. But with the Chargers, I know they need a wide receiver, but there is a blue chip prospect here on the board. I'm going to go ahead and say it, that there is a blue chip running back prospect here on the board. The number 2 guy on my big board, Mr. Bijan Robinson, who is, about as perfect as you're going to get with a running back. The biggest concern I have with him is there's times where he runs upright a little bit and he could use his power a little bit more, but that's coachable. You just tell him, hey, you're a big kid, go run somebody over, and eventually it'll get into his head, and he can match that with, perfect vision, the ability to cut on a dime, better long speed than we thought he had initially, really good pass catching ability out of the backfield, really good route runner. It just gives the Chargers a running back and not a glorified slot wide receiver in the backfield. And this is my personal bias seeping in, but the idea of him and Xander Horvath making up their fullback running back duo after Bijan getting to run behind another running back or another halfback that played like a fullback, excuse me, because if you don't know, Xander Horvath came into the league as a halfback out of Purdue, wasn't fast enough and didn't, possess the traits the Chargers wanted in a running back or in a halfback, excuse me. So they moved him to fullback. And Roshan Johnson reminds me a lot of that, like a better version, except he actually does have the ability to also play halfback. So that's who he's going to play in the NFL. But yeah, I just think Bijan is a perfect fit for the Chargers here. In real life, I wouldn't be surprised to see him go before this. Obviously, I didn't get to pick for Philly, but he definitely would have been in consideration for me there. I know Jackson earlier today, I believe, tweeted out and said that he's not a big fan of that pick, but call me biased, call me crazy. I definitely am. I think Bijan is an absolute stud, and I think any team that adds him is going to benefit greatly.
Yeah, I'm generally lower on this running back class, but from what I am hearing, it seems like the NFL is absolutely in love with Bijan, and if anything, we might be under projecting him. But yeah, in terms of like the fit, the Chargers need someone to actually be able to run the ball. Like we saw, that is the reason why they choked their last playoff game, because they didn't feel comfortable salting the game away with red zone Eckler. Like that just wasn't something that they could do. Pick 22 with the Ravens. It's not a guy that I am a fan of, but I think in terms of realism, this is probably the route they're going to go down. They obviously need a receiver, but I think in terms of the board, I don't think any of the guys really make sense for them. I am going to go with Maryland's Deonte Banks to the Ravens. I think that he is a project that most people are going to think this guy is worth taking a chance on. I'm a little bit against them, but he's staying in his home state of Maryland. The Ravens, I think, are really good with cornerbacks. They obviously turned Marlon Humphrey into a stud. And the other thing is, I think that Marcus Peters is kind of on his way out. I think that I don't know if he's a free agent. I really don't know what I think he is.
Yeah,
Even if
he's
they
close.
re-sign him, even if they re-sign him, his tenure is coming to an end. Banks is a guy who, in terms of pure athleticism, might be the best corner in this class. And there's a lot of things I don't like with him. I don't think he plays the ball very well in the air. Like a lot of people had this exact same issue with Quentin Johnston, where like he wouldn't go up and pluck it out of the air. He always like turned his body so he could make like that shoulder catch instead of using his alpha size to go up and get it. I think Deonte Banks has that same problem when the ball is in the air. I think he's very fidgety at the line of scrimmage and tends to get beat on press, even if it's just on like a single tap release. But in terms of like where there's not a lot of spots where he'd be like, okay, I think they could turn him into a stud. I think Baltimore's one of them. Staying in his home state, he's going to be behind at a minimum Marlon Humphrey and maybe Marcus Peters too, who's one of the better ball hawks of our generation. I think if anyone's going to fix that ball tracking issue, it could be Peters. But yeah, cornerback I think is a long-term solution for them, but I'm not a fan of how the Ravens offseason has panned out in general. So that doesn't necessarily mean I need to be a fan of their pick right here. So that's from a realism standpoint, that's what I'm going to do.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that at all. I think that's a great pick, especially like you said, with the receivers being off the board. I'm not a huge Quentin Johnston guy, and I don't think he's necessarily the best fit for Baltimore either. So I like that pick. Now, a player that you and I are both a fan of is going to go off the board here at 23, and that is unfortunately Nolan Smith.
Yeah.
Nolan Smith is such a great prospect. Obviously, he had the fantastic combine, and when you look at his tape, you see probably the best overall run defending edge in this class. His work with his hands is really good. The athleticism's there. He's got some learning to do as a pass rusher, but he's going to get to learn now from Brian Flores and Danielle Hunter, who also, is close to being on his way out potentially in terms of his contract. My buddy, the Geek Slays, big Vikings fan, he says everything he's read says that the Vikings aren't necessarily sold on keeping Danielle Hunter around long term. So you get Nolan Smith to learn from him and learn from Zadarius Smith. I forgot he's still on the roster because of the whole kerfuffle that happened where he wanted to get traded. But as of right now, he would be their third edge. We get to rotate in and out, come in and play some really good run defense. And I think as much as I would hate to see Nolan Smith go to Minnesota, this is a pretty damn good fit.
I am confused as to what I want to do with Jacksonville.
Fair.
I there's a guy that I think if I don't pick him, he might not get picked. And I don't know that it makes a ton of sense because I think that their defensive line is really good.
Mm-hmm.
This is kind of an unconventional pick, but the draft always has unconventional picks, so I don't really care. I'm gonna go with Lucas Van Ness to Jacksonville. They took a chance on a project rusher last year. I get it. They've got him and Josh Allen. I don't think that they're going to use Van Ness as an edge rusher. I think they're gonna go 3-4. I think we're gonna see a lot of bear fronts out of them, and he's gonna be kind of the stand-up 3 technique in that. He's someone that I think I kind of fear for his run defense right now. It's a little bit scary. But there's a lot to like about him. I think his ability to kind of convert speed to power is good.
Mm-hmm.
And there's a couple edge like project guys in this draft class. I think the main two are him and Murphy. I like him more than Murphy because it feels a lot more natural what he's doing. Whereas Myles Murphy, like, it doesn't feel like he can kind of play to his size. And if you want to size him down and use him as just a pure defensive end, I see the vision a little bit more there, but I might need to review the tape again to see how I feel about that because I never really looked at him like that when I was watching him. Unconventional pick, but I think in terms of the future of this defensive line, it would look really, really strong. I don't know that they have much outside of Allen and Trayvon Walker, who I think is going to break out, but I don't think Van Ness is going to be used as an edge. I think he's going to be used as like more of an interior 3 technique. I think they're going to bulk him up a little bit, and I think that he has some cleaning up to do on his technique. But this defensive line, we could be returning to Saxonville territory here with Van Ness. So that's kind of what I'm thinking.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. And, you know, in terms of the projection you have for it, obviously, like you said, not very conventional, but if they're going to kick him inside, then I think that's a great pick. I will say, though, if it makes you feel any better, if you wouldn't have picked him there, we would have found a way to get him in the first round. Lucas Van Ness is not slip into the second round in any of my mocks. I'll guarantee you that. But good. Here with the happy. Giants, yeah, no, I love Lucas Van Ness. He's my guy. He's my guy. But for the Giants here, you know, this would have been, you know, coming into the offseason if they wouldn't have made the big Bobby Okereke signing. This is where I would have went crazy and taken Jack Campbell because the Giants have such a bad history of, or not bad history, but bad recent history of inside linebacker play. And I think Jack Campbell's going to be a stud in the NFL. But now they add Okereke, and I don't think that's as big of a need. And with how linebackers are nowadays, you can wait to take them. So I think instead we're going to roll with a guy that fits one of Wink Martindale's philosophies, at least in New York, where he likes guys that are positionless defenders. And I'm sure Jackson already knows exactly where I'm going with that. We're going to be taking Brian Branch here for the Giants. As of right now, their nickel corner is Deonte Banks. I'm sorry. No, that's not.
Deonte Banks is a Raven in this scenario.
Darnay Holmes.
That's
who I was thinking of. Darnay Holmes. Yeah. Good God. Don't know how I got that backwards, but yeah, they've got Darnay Holmes as their nickel right now, and Brian Branch projects very well as a nickel safety hybrid defender. So I think Brian Branch is a big time upgrade there. And additionally, they just lost Julian Love. They can use more safety help, so maybe they want to play him back there. They can play him up closer to the line of scrimmage. There's a lot of different things you can do with Brian Branch. He's a very intelligent defender. You know, he's able to rush the passer well, you know, for a defensive back. So I think this is a really nice pick for the Giants. Get themselves a chess piece that Wink Martindale can have a field day with and move around and add to the athleticism on their defense.
All right, pick number 26 is, again, a little bit unconventional, but I don't think it's out of this world. I am going with Michigan's Mozzie Smith here, and my logic with that is you have the pass rushing duo of what's his name? Tank Lawrence and Micah Parsons.
Mm-hmm.
Off the edge, you are guaranteed one pressure every single play, and I don't think you really need to prioritize this pass rush. Where the Cowboys did struggle last year is defending the A gap. Mozzie Smith, I think, is a legitimate option that can two gap. I think you can play him stand up on the center, or not stand up, I guess. You can have him facing the center at kind of the zero tech, or kick him off a little bit as one or maybe two I. I like Mozzie Smith. I like the idea of them getting a nose tackle simply because it kind of completes their defensive line, if that makes sense. I like the cornerback room for them. I could see them maybe adding another receiver, but again, this receiver class is not good.
Mm-hmm.
I think this is like the final infinity stone to their defensive line, because obviously they're getting pressure every single play. I think they just need a little bit of help defending the run up the middle. Getting the best nose tackle in this class is probably going to be the best way to do that, even if it is a little bit of a reach. He's probably not going to be on the board by your next pick. So why not go ahead, get him now? Yeah, that's what I'm doing if I'm Dallas.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, in my Substack draft, I did something similar for them. I did, but I went a different route. I actually went with who I'm going to go with for this pick. And for the Buffalo Bills, we're going to be taking Kalijah Cansey. The interior of their defensive line is not great. Ed Oliver, Daquan Jones, Tim Settle, they're all slated to hit the open market next season as well. And as we all know, Buffalo is starting to deteriorate. A lot of their pieces are starting to, fade out with age or leave, like we just saw Tremaine Edmonds leave. Now that I think about it, this could have been a team where I went Jack Campbell, but I think Kalijah Cansey is a better player. I really like his quickness. I really like his get off. His run defense is pretty underrated, especially for his size. I don't quite see Aaron Donald like a lot of people want to, but I do see a very, very good, defensive lineman for Buffalo's defense here long term. And I think given the nature of what they've got coming up in terms of free agents and whatnot, like I already said, that this is a good fit for them.
All right, pick 28 with the Bengals. I am going with my second Ohio State tackle of the day. I'm going with right tackle DeWan Jones. I think this makes a lot of sense for them because offensive line was their biggest issue. And when that was true last year, they went absolutely all in on fixing the offensive line position. It obviously didn't really work. Lael Collins was not good. Jonah Williams did not take any steps forward, and I think they're going to make sure that he is not a starter for them next year. They already went out and signed Orlando Brown at pretty good value. Drafting DeWan Jones, I think this would probably give them the biggest tackle duo in history. The dude is like 6'8", whatever. I don't even know. And then you combine that with Orlando Brown. This is some serious size at the tackle position, and you worry a little bit, how are they going to keep up with those speedy wide nine edge rushers? But I don't care. I think that they're just going to kind of throw talent at the problem and hope it works because that's what they did last year, and it obviously didn't work. But they are going to just kind of have that aggressive strategy because you look at the window of the Bengals, it's closing pretty fast. Burrow does not have much longer on his rookie contract. Neither does Chase. There's probably going to be some guys that have to leave soon, and you need to throw legitimate cap safe pieces, I guess, in the room. DeWan Jones is good because he's one of – are you considering Darnell Wright a right tackle? Or are you considering him a left tackle?
Okay, I would call him a right tackle.
Then he's up there in terms of like pure right tackle prospects go, because I know Wright got snaps at both. DeWan Jones was just a right tackle. That is exactly where he's going to play because Orlando Brown loves left tackle more than he loves anything. Yeah. So that's what I am thinking for the Bengals.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. Now, unfortunately, I don't think we're going to get to see our least favorite first-round prospect fall out of the first round, just because with the Saints' history of liking these big athletic edge rushers and taking risks on guys, if you even really want to call it a risk, I think it's a risk. But we're going to go with Myles Murphy here. It just feels like a Saints pick. The athleticism is definitely there. He had his pro day today or yesterday, and I believe he ran a 4.52. So the athleticism is definitely there. It's just you worry about his ability to win inside. You worry about, the tenacity, the aggressiveness that just wasn't there on tape in 2022. But you rewind to 2021 and you see this borderline world beater defensive lineman. And, the Saints are probably looking at this and thinking, okay, we think he's going to return to that. I've heard rumors of a hamstring injury. Maybe that's what it was. I don't know how long that's been a thing. Maybe that's just an excuse, but you're banking on that 2021 tape, and it's the Saints. We know they like to take risks on their pass rushers, so they're going to get him in a room with Cam Jordan and I guess Cook, if you want to call it that.
I want to bring up one of our Twitter threads. When you initially started watching Myles Murphy, you tweeted Myles Murphy time, and I responded a worse Van Ness, and you go, I'm 5 minutes into the Florida State game, and I honestly see the vision, and I responded to that. Try to find one single rep of him winning on the inside. I dare you. You responded, challenge accepted. And here we are. He's not the dude because he's just not a natural fit as like the kick in, kick out guy that he projects to be. So yeah, little bit of the Miller football, jpownfl, Myles Murphy lore. With pick 30, I would like to go defensive line here.
Mm-hmm.
And if Murphy was on the board, I probably would have done that. If Cansey was on the board, I would have done that because their guys are just aging. And that was the exact logic that I had with the Paris Johnson pick.
Mm-hmm.
I am going to go another route. And it's a prospect that I know that both of us are a fan of.
Okay.
I texted you the other day. Let me know when you find the play in the Oklahoma State game. And you found it. And it is we're talking about safety JL Skinner absolutely murdering the Oklahoma State running back. And the reason that I like this pick is because I think that he offers pretty much everything you would really need out of a state. He's not getting any crazy coverage assignments, but he can handle his own in a deep third. Like you can put him up there in one high, and maybe he's not going to be the guy who's rangy enough to cover the field in cover one, but he's going to do his job up there, and he's great in the box. He's an awesome run defender, chases the big hit every single play. That is all he wants to do. He looks so bored in coverage. He just wants to kill people. And CJ Gardner-Johnson, I think, had a little bit of that in him. And obviously he's gone now. He's a Detroit Lion. I think them filling that hole with Skinner is awesome. He, to me, is the chancellor to someone's Earl Thomas, to put it in Seahawks terms, because he is just a big hitter. And I think he can play a little bit of off-man coverage. I think you can trust him in a seam. Like I said, like a deep third, he can hang in one high. I think Skinner is really great as a prospect. The only thing to me is where is he going to fall based on value of the safety position. And I think given the kind of barrenness of defensive linemen at this point in the draft, and I think this is filling a legitimate hole, I think Philly going with JL Skinner is an awesome pick. So yeah, I like this.
I'm glad he snuck into the first round. That makes me happy. I love Skinner. To put it bluntly, this is like Philadelphia putting the Terminator on their defense. Straight up. This is what just happened. And if you thought the Eagles defense was scary last year with CJ Gardner-Johnson, like you mentioned, having that little bit of dog in him, this is that cranked up to about 15. So I love that pick for Philly. He feels like an Eagle, man. The idea of somebody just flying up and killing somebody. It's like they just got baby Brian Dawkins in Philadelphia. They got baby Weapon X.
If he's not a Seahawk, then he's an Eagle in my eyes.
He's either a Seahawk, an Eagle, or a member of the AFC North. It's one of those six teams is where JL Skinner has to end up. Because I think if anybody out of the top prospects in this class has that quote unquote Black Air Force energy, it's JL Skinner.
Yeah, he ends up, if he ends up with the Ravens, he's going to be the next like Ray Lewis, the safety position. And if he ends up with the Browns, he's going to be guilty of like capital murder or something like that. Like there's such a range of outcomes within the AFC North. It depends which locker room he gets put into.
Right. Okay, so Kansas City Chiefs here at 31. Not gonna lie to you, I didn't have a great idea of where I was going to go with this pick. We did a little brainstorming off camera here, and I think the best case scenario here for the Chiefs, or the best route to go here, is going to be adding Will McDonald from Iowa State. Get yourself another pass rusher. You get yourself another pass rusher here in Kansas City. Obviously, they just lost Frank Clark, so they need to add another defensive end. And Will McDonald is an athletic freak that's going to be able to rush the quarterback pretty well. Projects pretty close to being a 3-down guy, maybe not right away, but he can develop and get to that point. And the good thing is, one of the other big critiques against him is his run defense, but you have Chris Jones, you have George Karlaftis, you have Leo Chenal, and Nick Bolton and Willie Gay. You have all these other pieces in the front seven that are really good run defenders, so you can afford to have a guy that maybe isn't quite up to snuff with them as a run defender. And I think Kansas City adding maybe not the best edge rusher on the board at this point, but definitely someone who's going to complement the rest of their defense pretty well. But yeah, I guess that does it. Jackson, while I'm doing this, if there's anything you want to plug.
Say TikTok and Twitter is jpownfl. That's JPOWNFL. That's kind of where I'm doing most of my prospect stuff right now because I have not completed my film journey. Usually what I do there is I'll post like clips and stuff while I'm watching film on Twitter, and then kind of compile them. It's a little bit of a mix on TikTok and give my 2 cents on the prospect. And then YouTube, I haven't been very active on there. I have 3 total videos right now, but it's something that I plan to keep on going with because I like doing it, and it gives me the opportunity to have like a more intricate breakdown. I think that one might be under just Jackson Powers, but if we're gonna put the Draft Crushes video in there, then that would also be in there too. That's a straight shot to the YouTube channel. So yeah, go look there. Yeah, that's all I have to plug.
Yeah, I'll make sure to include links to all of that in the description. Definitely make sure to check everything out. Jackson definitely knows ball. He's someone that I can vouch for sure. So if you want to learn a thing or two about some of the draft prospects this year, definitely make sure to go check his stuff out. While you're at it, make sure to check me out on all platforms, MillerFootball, Twitter, TikTok, Instagram, here on YouTube. I'm pretty much everywhere at this point. We're going to be posting more consistently here on YouTube. Obviously, we've got the shorts going with, quick prospect overviews. Then we're going to have more long form content, hopefully dive into ranking some of the prospects and things like that here in the near future. So if you're interested in that, definitely make sure to check it out. But until then, that's going to be all for this video. Make sure to leave a comment down below. Let us know how you think we did in this mock draft. Let us know if you hated our picks, you liked our picks. Either way, whatever you say is going to be good for the algorithm. So definitely make sure to let us know your thoughts. And don't forget to leave a like as well, though. Everyone out there watching this video, I hope you all have a wonderful day, evening, afternoon, night, whatever time of day it is for you. I hope you enjoy it because you're all wonderful people and you deserve it.